Greetings, everybody. That's a beat right there, just for those that want to look for it. That's actually off of Facebook, Trizzy TV, brother that just does beats. I thought that was a pretty cool. He just actually did that right off the bat when you pull it up on Trizzy TV. It's pretty cool to see some of that type of stuff when guys just grab a beat machine and they just going off. So I figure use that for the intro. I want peace and greetings to everybody. Peace and greetings to all the true gods and goddesses on the path doing the work. Shout out to T Wells. Appreciate the $10 donation. I know I always forget to mention it. The channel is monetized. If you do go to the bottom, I always forget to bring this up. I probably haven't brought this up in months. But if you go right to the bottom of the chat, you'll see that $sign. You can make a donation to the channel. I don't ask for it, but it's always greatly appreciated. So again, shout out to T Wells. I appreciate you. I know you've done it before. That ain't the first time. So we want to welcome everybody to the show this evening. Hot as fuck down here in Florida. I can tell you that right now. Man. When I tell you hot these last 3-4 days, hot. Mid 90s, high 90s. So it's blazing, man. So we're officially in summer. Like I said, we got fortunate for a while here where the weather didn't get hot like it usually does. Usually starts, early in the March, early April season. So our cool weather kind of extended a little bit longer. So it was greatly appreciated, but looks like we're making up for it now with this heat. So it's extremely hot here right now, people. But I guess that's better than cold, wet, and rainy weather that they're still kind of getting up north, barely getting in the 70s. But anyway, so we want to welcome everybody to the show. Just to go over a couple quick announcements before we get into it this evening. More than likely, due to ongoing stuff this month, I don't think we will have a ritual for this month. We more than likely will skip to take a break and reconvene next month, but that's always subject to change. But as of right now, I'm kind of contemplating it due to some upcoming stuff coming up, traveling, vacation, things of that nature. So as of right now, I'm probably going to say we won't for this month. We'll just skip this month and reconvene next month. And then August, there's stuff going on. So trying to plan around it. And it's good to take a little bit of a break once in a while just to, refresh. But I'll keep people posted on that because I know some people had emailed me yesterday asking about a ritual for this month. That's why you haven't seen me post anything in the last few days. Usually I try to get it up there as early as I can. But I'm still kind of on the fence with it. If nothing goes up by this week, more than likely there won't be one just for this month. And as I said, again, we'll reconvene the following month, okay? Also, again, to pump out the event that we'll be having in October. That'll be the weekend of the 25th to the 27th. I keep reminding people on a weekly basis. I know some of you, again, have emailed me. I've sent you the information that's available up until this point. We will be having an event that weekend, which will be the Journey of the Black Adept Conference #2. And as I've said, it's a 3-day event of workshops, presentations. There'll be some ritualistic work over the weekend, and various other things that will be going on that weekend. Also, as I mentioned, if you would like to do a presentation and you are coming to the event, contact me. Let me know what it is you would like to present, and we'll discuss it. Obviously it needs to be a left-hand path topic, and then we'll see if we can get people on the schedule. I'd like to get some new presenters, some new faces, so people can come up there and present different topics. So if you are interested in that, send me an email. Emails in the description box that you see right here in all the videos, khnum19@gmail.com. The online classes, and then I will get the advertisement out for the individual class that'll take place on the 29th, in addition before the online classes. That class will be from 3 to 7 p.m. It's a private class. We'll be getting into a bunch of different things. I'll have that formatted shortly. You can email me again if you want to participate in that class. And then the full online session will begin the following month, which is July 20th, running to the end of August, first week in September. With a break in the third week in August, the 23rd. That will be a Saturday. There will not be any classes for those that have signed up for that session. That'll be a week that I will actually be away in New York, traveling that week. So there won't be a class on that week in that block. So again, you can email me, same email address, spiritual consultations or readings. If you're interested in a consultation or a reading, again, just to cover the basics to prevent the back and forth email. Let me know your time zone that you live in. Very important if it's West Coast, the Midwest, or out of the country, so we can plan time zones accordingly. And your days of availability. That just kind of saves the back and forth email. And then specify if you want a reading or a consultation. A reading, again, is using a system of divination to work with the different spirits or energies. And a consultation is more of a free-for-all where we can discuss whatever it is you might want to discuss. You could focus on a specific area. You might want to talk about techniques on this path. People use it basically as what it is, a consultation, information and advice, working on the left-hand path via left-hand path practices, whatever you want to call it. You can utilize it for any of those things. So specify in the email which one you are interested in doing. Those little things just help save time, the back and forth email, because it's tough for me to go in and out of the emails because you get so many of them. Some of them go to the junk box. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with them all. Again, same email address, khnum19 at gmail.com for any of those four mentioned things. All right. So I think that's it for the announcements. Pretty much. All right. So the topic I want to kind of get into this evening, you see the title. All right. Activating the Eye of Lucifer. All right. We all probably have different concepts on that, right? We all probably have different ideas of how that can be applied, all right? So I want to discuss a couple of different methodologies. And one thing that I want to stress, okay? We all might have a specific, approach on how we utilize these archetypes, because these questions come up all the time. Some utilize some of these things literally. All right, so let's address that. Some work with them figuratively as a concept, using it under the construct of an archetype. That's entirely up to you. And I'm bringing that up because one thing we have to stop doing, and I've mentioned this a couple of times in the past, people I see still do it, whether they're conscious of it or not. We have to stop trying to define it or define these things under this concept of right or wrong. Okay. On this path, there is no such thing as right or wrong. It's about perception, how you perceive it, and how you decide to work with it. Because bottom line at the end of the day is it's about getting results. And I keep mentioning that over and over. And you're going to find in your travels, in your discussions, and in your dealings with people, you're going to find people that utilize things similar to you, that you can resonate with and connect with. And then you're going to find things, and this is both ways, you're going to find things that people utilize that you probably have no interest in or like, or any desire to work with any of those concepts. But they get results, and that's all that matters. So it's not about putting it in this, because when we put it under this construct of defining is right is wrong, my first question is you would have to describe to me, well, explain to me what is right or wrong, right? It is a matter of perception. It's a matter of how somebody perceives something. Because as I've said a million times before, you could take any concept and put 5 people in a room, and you probably would get 5 different perspectives on it. I'm sure that all 5 perspectives wouldn't be the same thing. So that concept or that statement, right or wrong, is basically it's a perceptionary or a perception thing. It's based on personal perception, how one perceives. So that has to be eliminated. Remember, when working on this path and what we call the isolated consciousness of the adversary, or set, as some will call it, working with the black flame, you have to isolate yourself from those things of conformity, of indoctrination. Any of those things that are the norm. When you're on this path, you have to think outside the box. So activating the Eye of Lucifer, let's start with one aspect of representation. Now, I don't want to get into, because what tends to come up, and this question, unfortunately, will come up on a consistent basis. Should we look at Lucifer as a literal deity? That's your personal choice. Again, I personally don't, not in that context from a monotheistic perspective. But I've gotten emails over the years where some people do, and it works for them. If that's what you do, don't try to get outside validation from somebody else. All right. That if it works for you. Now, again, I per se, that's not how I approach it, but that doesn't mean just because that's not how I do it, that it doesn't possibly work effectively for somebody else. And again, if it's about results and it works, like I just said, then who cares? So we're not going to get into that aspect because that'll come up. We're talking about working with that Lucifer energy period, or what some will call that Luciferian energy period, right? I talked a little bit about what they call the dragon or the serpent energy. We discussed a couple of weeks ago, right? All of this stuff is connected to what we call the Lucifer or dragon energy. And let me say this about validation and things of that nature. I want to share a story with you guys. I'm going to kind of be discreet about it. I ain't going to really get into names, dates, and places because that's irrelevant. All right. But let me give you an example of what I was just talking about so everybody's clear. And you probably can connect to this. All right. For a little bit of time in the last year or two, I've been doing, I should say, no more, was doing work with a group. Right? I ain't going to mention the group because it's pointless. I wouldn't even want to waste my time and energy doing that. To show you why groups don't work, group settings, constructs, because really at the end of the day, it's all a bunch of bullshit, and I'll explain. In this group, there was a difference of opinion on approaches to certain aspects of the left-hand path, okay? The problem, and let's just say, the problem that you have with these groups, they set up these organizations and they give themselves these fancy titles, priests, priestesses, magus, and all these other self-proclaimed titles, which really holds no significant weight other than in their little own personal bubble. Out in the real world, it really holds absolutely no weight, but that's another story for another day. And then usually you have these followers that are in these groups. But the funny thing is, most of these groups and organizations promote themselves as, you traveling the path to obtain your divinity, not following anybody else, doing what you need to do, as if you have the liberty, the sovereignty, and the freedom to become the god or the goddess that you're destined to be. Sounds good on the surface, and there's many groups out there like this. Again, we don't really need to get into details, but that opinion changes as soon as you might go outside the construct of these organizations, and so I had a difference of opinion with a couple of people in this organization. We had one dude, which I refer to as Yogi the Bear, I like to call him, Swami wannabe yogi, Agent Smith, funny dude. He's like, I call him the New Age Black Magician, because that's the vibe and energy he has. Then you have, you know, I'll call the other one Elder X. It's funny how when these people get titles, instead of filling a position, they let the position fill them. And it kind of gives them this false sense of illusion or security that they have the ability to dictate how you should perceive magic, which I think is funny. And this one elder had the nerve, which I thought was funny. I thought it was kind of arrogant. I just didn't even say nothing. I thought it was kind of funny how their group has a lock on the left-hand path. I thought that was kind of funny. Nobody has a lock on anything. Let's establish that. Each individual, you know, has the ability, you know, to do whatever they see fit. But when you have these groups and organizations that set up these hierarchies and structures, the problem that tends to happen is they tend to think it gives them the right to dictate what is right or wrong. And that's why I said that whole right or wrong concept is a bunch of bullshit. It's personal. It's basic perspective. And that's why working in group systems, I'm going to be honest with you, because I've been a part of many different things over the years, as you guys know, I've mentioned, which it just doesn't work. Not on this path. It doesn't work because one person can have, again, as I said a few minutes ago, a perception on an aspect of a spiritual system on this path, and somebody can have another. And that's okay. If one aspect works for some and it doesn't work for the other, again, it's dictated by results, okay? And that's what we got to focus on this path. Activating the Eye of Lucifer is activating that intellect within. Seeing through the Eye of Lucifer. Some might call it putting on the deific masks, but when you put on that deific mask, and sometimes when you're part of these Mickey Mouse clubs, and as I said, the characters that I just mentioned, again, Elder X and Yogi the Bear, which really the organization, as I found, was a bunch of wannabe hipster yuppie intellectuals is best way I can describe it. You know, I try to work with everybody, but sometimes it just doesn't work. And the example of the one character I'm talking about, and again, I'll refer to him as Yogi the Bear, wannabe yogi, because he's into yoga. You know, I call him a New Age Black Magician because he got a New Age vibe to him. Had that mentality, hardcore. Like if you didn't see things through his perspective, you know, it wasn't correct. And that's religion, okay? And then when you have these systems of hierarchy, they go complain to the hierarchy. It's like a bitch system. It's a chain bitch system that filters down, literally. And that's why it don't work. So activating the Eye of Lucifer is about retaining your individuality. And I'd say this, and I would say this to you all, to anybody that tries to, you know, constrain or hold you back, tell them to basically go fuck themselves. Anybody that tries to stop your creativity, your growth, and tries to dictate to you your perception and how you should look at magic, that's not the place you want to be on this path. That's not what this path is about. It's the complete opposite. That basically is a religious structure. Activating the Eye of Lucifer, again, is about retaining that individuality, that creativity, thinking for yourself, not being a conformist, okay? Hold on, Raven, I see you in here. I'm gonna send you the link. Just saw you in here. Let me send you the link, and when you're ready, you come in when you want. Hold on. All right, I just sent you the link. So when we activate that divine, we call intellect, right? We know Lucifer represents the light bearer. We talked about that on many shows in the past, right? We've gone over that many times before. But what does that light really represent to you on this path? Ask yourself that question. Now, I was on an internet board and somebody had posted a question. They're newer, and I want to bring this up because it's very very relevant to the topic we're talking about. They're kind of new on the path, and they're doing research on the concept of Lucifer and what Lucifer represents. So this individual posed the question. She's doing all this research on Lucifer. She's confused because she's hearing all these different things: Lucifer, Satan, Samael, Azazel, the devil. Is this all the same thing? Are they different? This and that. And again, my response to that was, no. And this was a person who was sincere, just starting out on the path, and they're trying to find their way, and they're really trying to learn. So it was a sincere question. It wasn't a question out of sheer stupidity. So let me make that crystal clear. All right. It wasn't out of sheer stupidity. So this was my suggestion to that individual. Okay. When you first start out on the path, it can be a little overwhelming or confusing, because this person, obviously, you could tell came from or just recently left a religious background and was just venturing out on the path. And whether they were conscious of it or not, obviously they still had that religious approach or mindset. So my suggestion to her was, start by researching the etymology of these titles, right? And as we talked about on the show in the past, the word Satan just means adversary. When you see that in the Hebrew text, as we've talked about in the past, that title was not exclusive to the character that we call Satan or the devil in the Bible. We're talking from the scriptural perspective. It just denotes or describes an action. This is where it can get confusing. So you see that word or that verb, Satan, multiple times throughout the Bible. And many of those instances, it's not referring to this character that we call Satan at all. When you're seeing these different titles, whether it's Samael, Poisoner, Zavel, Satan, the adversary, Lucifer, the light bearer, etc., Canas, the whisperer, it's denoting an action. They're archetypes of the same thing, but different aspects of those different archetypes. This is where I think the confusion comes in for some, more so, I'm going to say, newer people on the path. And again, this person was a newer person, and it was a sincere question, and it was a good question. But where one can get confused, and this is why I don't look at it from a monotheistic approach. If you're approaching it literally, it gets confusing because, as I said in the past, most of the time we're never taught to do research the correct way when it comes to a lot of this data and this information. Most of us, unfortunately, came up through systems of indoctrination. I'm saying most of us. I know some people, oh, it wasn't me, I didn't come up in religion. Well, if you weren't raised in a religious household, you're raised in a country that's founded on religion. So you're influenced by it, whether it's in the workplace, the educational system, sporting events, the media, TV. We're all subjected to it on some level, regardless if your upbringing wasn't from a religious household. And that's why you can't approach it from a monotheistic approach. It does not work, okay, in my opinion. So we have to start, again, doing our due diligence and research and coming to the conclusion of these things so we have a better understanding of it. Not somebody else's understanding of it, not somebody else's interpretation of it, not somebody else's opinion of it, because that doesn't count. That's not real truth. Real truth is personal. When you raise yourself up to the realization of it, right? When you really have an understanding of it and it hits you, right? Some on this path might call that moments of Kepera or Kefer, pronounced many different ways and many different systems. A realization, or coming to the realization, or coming into the realization of who you are, or who you really are, based on raising yourself to the level of the realizations of these truths, right? That's what permeates from the black flame, or the gift of Set, as we also call it on this path, which is very important to understand. But that isolation that we talked about in the beginning, that I mentioned in the beginning, if you were remembering,
one must go into that isolation to get a thorough understanding of it. You're not going to get it trying to conform to a previous system. It doesn't work. What I mean by a previous system is a previous way of thinking. And to the young lady that had asked that question, I'm approaching it from that perspective. So we got to start doing research when it comes to questions like that. Understand, what do these words mean? What do these titles mean? Okay. That's going to give you a telltale sign of what direction, at least points you in the right direction of where you should be headed. And it gives you a better understanding of what you're dealing with. That's important, because if that is not done, then it's left open for interpretation. And then step two, it leads you to the point where you could be influenced by somebody, right? And that could have an effect personally, in my opinion, on your growth, all right? So seeing through the eye of Lucifer is kind of similar to putting on the deific mask, right? We hear this term in many different practices, especially in Egyptian Heka or Egyptian black magic. The Necro-Minion book by Michael W. Ford, which is the works of Charles Pace. If you're not familiar with Charles Pace, I would suggest you research Charles Pace. In my opinion, I think he has some great works. I thoroughly enjoy a lot of the works that he put forth. He considered himself a priest of Set. He worked with the black magic current of Set. The book that Michael W. Ford put out, the Necro-Minion book, was basically his works. He got the approval to go ahead and put that information out. The book is great because it deals with the aspect of your agathodaemon, or your personal daemon. As we know in the Greek, means your higher self. It's activating, and I'm going to connect this all to the eye of Lucifer so you can understand. Looking through the eye of Lucifer, or putting on the deific mask, is an aspect of connecting with your real or higher self. Because you're not trying to see the difference between trying to understand what the adversary is, whether you're calling it Lucifer, Satan, Samael, Canas, Sotuk, Set. Those are just titles. But to really embody and understand that, you must put on that symbolically deific mask and look through the eyes, in this case, of Lucifer, to get that understanding. Right? The works of Charles Pace, in my opinion, and I know some of you are familiar with the work, or you've emailed me about it, I think is unique because he gets into working with the deific mask, working with the different Egyptian Natiru, not worshiping them, not propitating them, not offering prayers to them like you will see in some right-hand path, fluffier Kemetic systems. And if that's your thing, fine. Not in that sense. He's using the aspect of evocation, putting on the mask and embodying the energy of what those deities represents. And in his work, there's many different ritualistic workings one can pick and choose from. If they decide need be, pretty much every natir is covered in there. If that's one of the areas of work you decide, but where he gets heavy into the agathodaemon and the deific mask. The agathodaemon, right? And it's unique because the symbol you'll see in the book, which actually is very close to the Ouroboros that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, is represented by the serpent. You'll see the symbol in there if you've read the work. I was talking a couple of weeks ago about the dragon aspect of what we call Lucifer, right? And it represents that Kundalini energy, right? It represents that serpent energy, the activation of the chakras and the Kundalini energy, activating and opening those higher states of awareness. This is all connected. That's how one really is able to truly work with their personal daemon / agathodaemon. Another good book I would put out there, The Black Ship by Malthus. I've talked about that before over the last couple of years. That book, in my opinion, is a very good book because it deals with demonic integration. It deals with working with chaos energy. It deals with the concept of the black sun. There are aspects in that book dealing with the ancestral and bloodline connection, ancestrally, and connecting it to demonic integration, which in my opinion is very important. I think ancestral work on a left-hand path level, not a religious aspect. I don't really work with it like that. Not from an Ifa aspect. That's more traditional. And in my opinion, religious. I'm talking about working with spirits, demons, from that aspect, which is working with it on a much higher level. And the black ship deals with the ancestral aspect of it from a left-hand path perspective, and that's the difference. You will see some similarities in there, setting up altars, but the actual work, you'll see where it differs from most traditional systems. I've suggested that book over the last couple of years. I suggest, if you have not gotten that book and read it, a good book for demonic integration and ancestral work on the left-hand path. A very good book. In Charles Pace's works, they'll use the term agathodaemon, which is basically the same thing, just another term. And we see that serpent of the symbol, that symbol of the serpent, the snake, right? Representing that dragon energy or the reptilian eye of Lucifer, right? Now, when I'm saying reptilian, don't get spooked out. We're not talking about aliens and grays, and because I know there's a whole nother community out there that deals with reptilian species on that level. We're not really talking about it on that level because that's more that's something that can be debated another time. I don't even want to get into that. We're talking about the concept of the dragon and the serpent and what it represents, fire being one of the key elements, right? All of these things play an integral part in understanding and working with and activating the eye of Lucifer, right? Then we can now move and connect it to the pineal or the third eye, right? We always talk about in relation to the Kundalini energy, whether we're working with the chakras from the root on up. Let me give you an example. This past weekend in the ritual that we did, working with the peacock angel, which is another aspect of the adversary, Melek Taus, right? We did a ritual this past weekend, and there was a guided meditation in the ritual where we worked with activating the serpent and working that serpent energy via the chakras, starting the root. And what we did was, as we activated that energy and bring it up through the chakras and emerged it through the crown, we then took on the form of what we would call a snake or a serpent and visualized ourselves looking through the eyes or the eye of Lucifer. So when we're talking about the serpent, when we're talking about the reptilian eye, we're talking about the dragon energy, right? Which now connects us to another aspect that you might be familiar with that will connect to this aspect of Lucifer, is Leviathan, right? We talked about a little bit about Leviathan a couple weeks ago when we had, or last week I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, when we had Brother Bao Cadman on. Leviathan represents that void, that darkness, that aspect of time that is not linear, is not constricted to beginning or end. It's the continuity of continual existence, right? Lucifer connects to that energy because that is one of the dragon aspects one can invoke via Lucifer using the concept of Leviathan, all right? Because to really understand and see through the eye of Lucifer, you have to break the concept of linear time. It's not real. And in that void and darkness, when we were going through the Klipothic tree, right? We know the Sitra Achra represents the other side. It's the antithesis to what we know as the Kabbalah, right? Or the Sephirah, right? We know that other side is that void, right? Is that area, for lack of a better word, where these demonic energies exist and where we're able to tap into it via our subconscious mind, right? There is where you find the real Lucifer energy in its many forms, whether you're calling it Samael, Azazel, Lucifer, Satuk, or Set. That is where you connect. Until you break that concept of time and space, right? Because when we look at pictures, for an example, and I want to get into the flat earth shit, okay? I don't want to get into the flat earth shit. I personally don't really agree with that shit. So let's not go there. When we see pictures, the planet is engulfed in darkness at all times. The galaxy is engulfed in darkness at all times, okay? Everything emerges from darkness. You resided in a watery abyss in the womb of the ultimate darkness, which is the female. You lived in that darkness for a period of 9 months in that dark, watery abyss, which some say represents the waters of Tiamat, which emerges from Leviathan, right? And you sat in that deep, dark, watery abyss for 9 months before you emerged out of that primordial chaos or stage and were birthed into this universe. There's science in that, okay? There's science in that because you can connect it to the chaotic waters of Nun in ancient Egypt, same thing. It was trying to show us about our evolution and the process we go through and our many births into this universe. We've been here many times before. It's not our first time here. It's not our first go around. I mean, you'd be stupid to think that, okay? Now, are you going to find that in a book? No, not specifically. You can read up on theories and concepts of past life existences, reincarnation. I've always encouraged people to do research on that and draw your own conclusions. In my opinion, that's something you have to raise yourself up to the personal realization of. Yes, there's theories out there. Yes, there's research that's been done out there. There's concepts. That's great. But I think you have to do personal work of how you can come to that realization for yourself. I don't really think there's something you can read about, in my opinion. But we have to go back into that deep, dark, watery abyss that Leviathan represents to really understand ourselves. Because that's where you really find the true Lucifer energy and what Lucifer represents. When we take it up to modern day times, when he's referred to, and I'm using symbolic terms, the angel of light, right? The eternal creator, the ultimate father, right, on this path, all right? That's because of the vast amount of knowledge, wisdom that is contained in what Lucifer represents, contrary to what religious people might think, because they've been given the complete polar opposite. As I said many times before, when you do the research and you really read your Bible and your Quran, ask a monotheistic person, a monotheistic believer, whether they be a Muslim, Christian, or a Jew, who really was carrying out devilish acts according to your concept of the devil. Because when I read the Bible, it's nothing but a book of bloodshed, death, war, incest, rape, pillaging, stealing, robbing. There's so many contradictions in it, other than when God will give you commandments says you shall not kill and steal, other than when he's giving you the okay to go to war, to rob, steal and kill, and then request a portion of it, right? Melchizedek came back from war and offered a tenth of the booty or the loot that he got. And by the way, people, this is where churches get their concepts of tithes or tithing or giving tithes, which is an Old Testament concept, by the way. You find it mentioned in Hebrews too. This is where the concept of giving 10% of your earnings comes from, by the way. It's based on a concept of looting, stealing, and war. That's a whole nother story. I'm saying, to me, it's irrelevant, neither here nor there, but I'm saying that to say, according to the definition of monotheism, of devilishment, when I read the Bible and the Quran, it seems like the God of the Quran or the Bible does more of these evil acts, according to how monotheistic people look at evil, than this concept of the devil. As I said before, when you read the story of the aspect of the adversary in the book of Genesis, as Canas, the whisperer, right? And as I said, they use that term whisperer because they're slick. When they put these messed up translations, they refer to the serpent in the garden. There's that connection with that serpent energy. Was it a snake? No. Go back and read your Hebrew. The word means to beguile, be crafty, right? It's a characteristic that describes a snake because the snake is slithery and it moves. People automatically equate the word serpent as if that's what really a snake is. It describes the action of the snake. It's not, in essence, the snake when you look at it in the Semitic languages. That's the research you have to do, okay? But the concept I'm trying to get to is when you really, if you were honest with yourself, and I've asked religious people this and I've watched them dance around this question, who actually told the truth in that garden story? Because as we know, and for those that don't, let's refresh your memory real quick. Okay? Adam and Eve were told if they partook of the forbidden fruit of the tree in the Garden of Eden that they would die if they ate it, right? We all remember that story. Something we were told at a very early age as kids, okay? They were told if they partook of the forbidden fruit, they would die. And here comes the serpent, and he says to Eve, that's a bunch of bullshit. That's not true. If you eat of it, you will surely live and you will become like gods, like them, like one of the Elohim, right? Elohim is plural for beings, for a group of beings. Elo is singular, El Elo, the source, right? So he told Eve the opposite. That's not true. If you partake of this food, you will become like a god, knowing right from wrong, so-called good from evil, right? Or knowing right from wrong, okay? When the story plays out, who told the truth? We know they ate of the apple. Did they die, people? Did they die? No, they didn't. So who lied in this situation? Now we see God's lying, and this is the same God that gives that as one of the main 10 commandments. We know there's 613 commandments in the Old Testament, which probably 610 of them are probably ridiculous. But one of the main commandments that everybody's familiar with, thou shalt not lie, right? And here's God lying. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, what was the whole purpose of that story? What was the whole purpose of that deception? Because that right there would be against Christian ideals or monotheistic ideals. We see they partook of the fruit. They didn't die. And then God got on a ego trip and a power trip. As I said, like I was mentioning these groups and these organizations earlier, where they say you have the liberty and freedom to do what you want. You don't have free will, people. It don't exist in certain circles. The illusion of it does. So basically, God got pissed off and had a power trip and ego moment, just like some of these groups do that have these self-proclaimed titles, as I said earlier, priestess and magus this and head chief warlock this, whatever fucking titles they give themselves. When you don't follow their rules, then you're banished from the Garden of Eden, right? So they didn't die. God couldn't even fulfill his own promise. He lied to them. He hustled them. And when he couldn't fulfill the promise that he claimed would happen, then we see they were removed from the garden. So we should be asking ourselves a couple of questions here. And see, what we're doing now is this is how you look through the eye of Lucifer and break things down and see them for what they really are, not for what people want to present them as, not how it's been taught via systems of indoctrination through religion. No. The fact of the matter is, let's just use basic common sense. Okay? We should be asking ourselves the question, why the deception? Why the lie? Why is the character, the serpent, being painted as some evil, wicked, bad guy? And this biblical character, this all-loving, compassionate, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent God is being presented as this compassionate and loving God, when we see that's not the case. Okay? So there's a narrative here. What's the narrative? Question everything that you're taught. Don't accept shit just because everybody else accepts something, that doesn't mean it's true. Just because you might have the majority of agreements on something, because here, we could have a room and we could take a vote, right? Look at the presidency vote, right? Majority vote wins, but does that necessarily mean it was the right choice? I don't think I need to even expound on that. Okay? We sometimes get caught up on that, and that same mentality and mindset filters into our work on the left-hand path, whether we're conscious of it or not. We either influenced by others with that mentality, or it's embedded in us subconsciously, and we're not aware of it, that we're still using that approach. And that's why I was saying earlier, it's a matter of perception. Because if we put, let's use that garden story real quick. If we put left-hand path practitioners in the room, Muslims, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Taoists, you name it. And we went around the room and we asked everybody in that room, we asked the left-hand path person, what's your perception or breakdown of this story? We would get one perception of it. If we asked the Buddhist, he would give you another. If we asked the Christian, the Muslim, the Jew, they would give another. So now we got to ask ourselves, which one is right? Well, there's three ways. If you use critical thinking, it's very easy to come to the conclusion of this, all right? One, you'd have to first apply critical thinking. One, the story's fictitious. It doesn't make sense when you use factual and historical documentation. So we would have to do that first, right? One, it's a matter of perception. We'd have to understand an individual personal perception is going to be influenced by their religious or spiritual background. So we obviously know the monotheistic person isn't going to look at it the same way as the left-hand path practitioner. So when we eliminate personal faith and belief, then we have the concrete evidence. So let's eliminate personal belief. Well, the left-hand path practitioner doesn't deal with faith and belief, not on a fictitious level. Personal faith and trust in oneself, that's a whole nother level of faith. That's a different story. There is a such thing as true faith, faith based on facts, faith based on coming to the realization of these truths for yourself, not mythological and religious faith. That's a whole different story. I've talked about that before in the past, okay? We're talking about, once that is eliminated, then we see. The fact of the matter is we saw who was lying and who was telling the truth. That's it. It's that simple. If people were big enough to put aside their egos, it's very easy to come to the conclusion on some of these silly things that we argue over, okay? And these are things in this day and time that people are still arguing over in certain circles. I'm not talking about us on this path, because the shit is irrelevant to us, okay? It doesn't matter to us. Because I'm not really concerned about no garden story in the book of Genesis. It's relevant to me because I'm not religious. But I'm just using it because it ties in and connects to what we're talking about. And as I said before, many times before, when you look at the Bible from an occult perspective, when you look at the Bible from a left-hand path perspective, from a metaphysical perspective, there's many different hidden meanings in there. When you remove the faith and the belief system, it takes on a whole different meaning. So there's ways to look at it, is what my point is. So activating the Eye of Lucifer, and again, let me back up. I want to go back quickly to Charles Pace works. And I was talking about, and I know it kind of veered off into other areas. I was talking about the agathodaimon and the works of Charles Pace via Heka or Egyptian black magic, right? This is important to understand because the foundation, as I said many times before, in my experience, is activating the higher self, right? Because again, that's all that word means. It's not spooky. There's nothing really deep about it. Until you really connect with your personal daemon, you will never really understand a lot of these concepts. How does that work start? Well, we talk about so many times on the show doing shadow work, right? We always hear you must do the shadow work. You must deal with your bullshit. There is a shadow aspect of ourselves that we have not perfected. That's a reality. We all have work to do. Anybody that thinks they don't, they're full of shit. If you think you're perfect and you don't have no faults, that's your first fault. You're under an illusion. We all have anger issues. We all have emotional issues on some level, okay? We all have shortcomings, right? We all struggle in certain areas, right? And as I mentioned before, it could be to the simplest of mundane things of managing money, not being a good mother or a father, not really giving an intense 100% pure effort in what you're trying to achieve in life, laziness. I think we all have an aspect of laziness that we're all guilty of. Laziness ties into consistency or lack thereof. Because one of the gripes I get all the time in emails in doing ritualistic work and being on this path, boo hoo hoo, I just don't have the time. I'm so busy. I don't know how. Join the club, people. It's called life. Welcome. Okay. I can't sympathize with that. And I'm not trying to be callous or a jackass. I don't sympathize with that because you're talking to somebody that's pretty much up every day at 4 a.m. in the morning, juggling professional life, career, business with personal life. So I can't connect to somebody that is lazy because the first question I ask a person that cries about not having enough time, describe to me your daily life and your daily routine. And most of the time they find that they are not utilizing their time correctly. Okay? They're not managing their time correctly. Okay? The
I have a
point
question.
is, huh?
I didn't mean to cut you off. I have a question.
No, go ahead. You asked it at the perfect time. I'm gonna step away from. Oh no, go ahead. Ask, and then I'll step away.
Oh well, I'll say this. Well, because Bobby and I was just typing about it. This is too when it comes in. When you talk about how do you call it? Managing your time. What do you? It's a managing your time.
Right.
You know, blocking out your day so you have time for this, time for that, time for this, and time for that.
Right.
You called it something I can't think of it. But what you're speaking of reminds me of that. Um, that as if we are calling ourselves whatever we're trying to call ourselves, or we ever trying to walk this path,
Mm-hmm.
you're right, we can't make excuses. You have to find that time, 5, 10,
Exactly.
15, 20, 25. You have to find that time. You find time to be on social media all damn day,
All day.
all day. I can't all day. That's all day. I done block people. Okay. All day on
And it's funny you bring that up because I always say to myself, "Damn, how do people have time to do this shit all day, man?"
all day.
Yeah, man.
All day. But you call this something, and it is this takes me back to the ritual. Now the ritual is coming back to me by working with that space and time, by being in the void. But you
Correct.
also called it, maybe it had something to do with masonry. I don't know. Maybe this one I'm
Okay.
getting at.
It's
Yeah,
not coming to me, but maybe it will. But go ahead.
yeah. But you do speak on it about how that is part of walking this path, being able to manage your time successfully. If you want to, you can't achieve nothing in life if you're not putting forth that time and effort. Nothing's going to come to you if you're just sitting on your ass thinking that someone owes you something, because that's in essence what it is. Because if you're sitting there, you think somebody else is supposed to give it to you, then you getting up. Then that says to me, then you're not the master of your ship. You're not the master of your own circumference. You're not that Godhead of your own self.
I agree 100%. Were you on in the beginning when I was talking about Yogi the Bear, Agent Smith, and Elder X, and
No,
groups? And,
no.
that's what I was talking about, because everything you're saying, and that's what activating the Eye of Lucifer represents, is you have to come to the realization of it yourself. It can't, real truth is not dictated to you based on somebody's perspective.
I bristle at that. I don't want nobody. I bristle at that. That makes me bristle. I've worked too hard, come too far for someone to say that it can't be done this way, it has to be done that way. You can't think this way, you have to think that way. You can kiss my black ass.
Exactly.
Honestly,
Exactly.
that's where I'm at with that.
And that's a good point. But see, we understand also, when using the mindset or the Luciferian concept, we understand and accept. We don't have to agree, but we understand and accept that there's going to be many different perspectives of how people look at things.
And it should be that way, right? Because if we don't, then we form in cliques, we form in organizations, we form in religion.
And that's why that group shit does not work. That's exactly what I was talking about in the beginning, because of that.
Yeah.
That's correct. 100% correct. What else you got?
No, that was it. Because you was talking about that. It's going to come to me. It's something that I can't think of it right now. But
yeah, I know what you're talking about. When it clicks in, just interrupt. If you want to, if you can give me 1 minute and hold it down, I'm going to step away for 1 quick second. I want to get some vitamin C drops, and I got to check on something.
Vitamin C drops.
Yeah. The ones that I'm always snacking on.
Smacking on, and everyone. But yeah, and just in relation to what Brother Beniti was just stating, we all go through, life is not a bed of roses. We all have shit in our lives that we have to deal with, family, work, career, starting a business, owning a business, and still trying to grow on your path. All of us can't sit home and AKA just be magical all motherfucking day. We all can't do that, right? But what we all can do is perfect our craft and find the time to do so. And I think that's magic within itself. I try to look, that's my new thing. I try to look for every opportunity to do something. I do something before I walk into work, before I go to bed. Those are the 2 musts. Because it doesn't take anything. So when people say to me that their lives are so busy, well, you busy doing what? I'm quite sure if you look at your phone, there's probably a couple of games on there that you can exit out, a couple of apps that you can put yourself on a timer, especially these iPhones. No. Especially with these iPhones, everything has a timer. You can put yourself on a timer. It doesn't mean that you can't kick back and chill, have a laugh, or be on social media. It's just that cannot rule you. But then that's your Godhead, that's your religion, that's social media. So yeah.
Good point. All right. So what I'm going to do is finish up with a couple of things. I'm going to go to your questions in the chat, so be patient. I'll go to your questions, your comments in the chat, and maybe open the phone lines for a little bit. We'll try to keep it brief, try to stay within the time frame. So yeah, I think all the things that we're talking about this evening, not being a conformist, looking through the eye of Lucifer, this is what these things represent. Okay? We're talking about various different aspects. There's many different symbolisms. There's many more. Obviously, we could be here for a long period of time talking about it. All right. But this is the approach. Now, how you decide to work with it, how you decide to grasp that and what you format, what type of ritualistic work you create from it, that's entirely up to you. Don't let anybody tell you whether they agree with it or not, that it's right or wrong. Tell them, like I said earlier in the video, go fuck themselves. Okay? Because at the end of the day, if it's working for you and you're getting results, that's the objective with anything in life, not just left-hand path. If it's sports, the results, if you're winning, that's all that matters, right? If it's in the business world, you're making that cheddar, that green, that cake, whatever you want to call it, then you're successful. On the left-hand path, when you're working magic and the desired outcome is manifesting, there's your answer. That's all that matters. When you got people that feel that they're so arrogant and egotistical that they want to shoot down your approach just because they can't connect to it, but they're negating the fact that you got results, shows that they don't really understand what magic is then. Because just because they can't connect with it because they don't utilize that aspect of it doesn't mean it doesn't work. You know how many people I've run in over the years that they work with concepts that I've never worked with? Some I'm never familiar. I don't connect with it or resonate with it on any level, but I don't shoot it down. Just because I never utilized it or work with it, I'm not going to criticize it and bash it because I see it worked for them. So they made a connection. They tapped into the power of magic and it worked for them. So who am I to question or belittle that? We don't do that as Luciferians using the Luciferian mindset. We say, look, if that person do it, I can create my own shit and do what I need to do. We don't worry about who thinks it's in line with a certain ideology. And that's why I said in the beginning of the video, when I was giving the story, why groups don't work. Group settings don't work because they're all they are is little boxes and systems of control. And all these little groups that have these hierarchies, as I said earlier, with these administrative titles, I'm a pessimist and I'm magus and priestess. It's all self-created. They ain't out here in the real world, they regular motherfuckers like the regular people. Okay? Only in their little personal bubble are they these potentates and all these other titles they give themselves. Shit is irrelevant in the real world.
Well, isn't that what the deacons in churches do? Don't churches do?
Oh yeah, same thing. They think because they're deacons and priests and ministers and, you know, I'll tell you what, Jack, when you walking down the street and we walking down the street on that sidewalk, you just a regular motherfucker like everybody else in the world. Nobody give a fuck about that at the end of the day. I know I don't. In my years being in the Masonic Lodge, the Rosicrucian Order, the Martinist Order, OTO, I've held every position of authority you could probably think of in them organizations. I've been masters over lodges. I never let it go to my head. I never let the position fill me. You fill the position. That's the difference. The problem is some people get a title and they just don't know how to act. They think it gives them some authority, but it really doesn't. In their little bubble, it does. In their real world, it does. And I was telling them about the individual that I was having a difference of opinion on, Black Magic, who I referred to as Elder X, had the nerve to say to me that his group has a lock on the left-hand path. And I thought that was fucking comical.
Well, how can anybody have a lock
I
on
said that.
on
That's why I said. I thought it was.
But how can you have a lock on it? It's a path.
Well, when you're in bubble world,
Many
of course you're going to think that.
So you got a lock on voodoo. So you got a lock on Santeria. So you got a lock on Lacumbe. So you got a lock on Mamiwata.
Yeah, everything.
What do you have a lock on? What did you have a lock on? There's many paths. The path is wide.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That's interesting.
But see, looking through the eye of Lucifer gives you that perspective. You look. This is how we look at things. This is called utilizing critical thinking. Coming to the conclusion for yourself and not worried about what anybody else thinks. Not concerned. Because I don't worry about what anybody else thinks because it's irrelevant to me. It doesn't exist. It only exists and interferes with what you're doing if you allow it to. All right? All right, so having said that, let me go up through the chat. I'm going to start from the top. So Be patient. If you typed in a question, I'm going to start from top to bottom. I will try to open the phone lines for a little bit within reason. And again, when we open the phone lines, because again, when the line is blocked, I can't answer another call. So kind of be straight to the point with your question so we can keep the phone lines open and try to get in a few calls if we get to that point, right? All right. So peace and greetings. I appreciate everybody. T. Wells. Again, I know you made a $10 donation. Brother Phil, I appreciate the donation. I know I never mentioned it because I always forget. It's not really on my mind and I never ask. The channel is monetized. You can go right to the bottom. If you see that $sign, I'm going to start mentioning it. Again, I don't ask. It's not that it's needed, but it is appreciated. If you click that $sign at the bottom of the chat box, you can make a donation from $1 to whatever you want to make. It don't matter. So I just want to acknowledge those that made donations tonight. I appreciate it. It's greatly appreciated. All right. All right. So let's see what we have here. All right. Yeah, that beat that I played in the beginning, again, for those, if you didn't hear me, you can find that on Facebook, Trizzy TV. It's a brother who basically, I'm sure we've all seen videos of that in different places. Some of these brothers are real creative. They could just take a beat machine and just come up with shit right on the spot. And that brother just did that beat live right on the spot. I stumbled across that a few days ago, and I thought that shit was fly as hell. It had me amped up. I love the energy of that track. If you see the video of the brother playing it, you can see that brother is just naturally linked in to that soul and that energy. I got hyped just watching him play it. So I just want to put that out there. Credit goes to that brother at Trizzy TV for that beat. Some fly shit. So I'm going to start using that also in addition to Main and some of the other tracks. All right, but what else we got? Okay. I don't see no questions, man. Guys that got comments. I'm skipping through all that. If I skipped something, I don't think I did. Yeah, it's a good statement by the Black Tower. I like that. And we do have to do the devil's work because obviously if a Christian hears that, they get scared, but that's not what it means in that context. We do, because it's taking everything that's incorrect and making it correct. All right. I'm still looking for some questions. I don't really see no questions, people. Okay, here's the first one by Jack the Adversary.
Oh, okay.
Did I miss one?
No, go ahead.
All right. Why is Adam's son named Seth? Again, when I was saying earlier, first, what'll give you the answer to that, understand the stories, number one. We'll go through it real quick. And the meaning of the word Seth in the Hebrew. The word Seth in the Hebrew, when you look it up, means he who is compensation. Who was Seth compensation for? He was compensation for Abel, because we know the story that Cain slew Abel, right? And if you read the story, after that happened, Adam wanted a guarantee that this wouldn't happen again. So this biblical God gives him another son, and he titles him Seth, which means he who is compensation. Again, compensation for who? Abel. Because we see Cain slew Abel, right? So that's what the word in Hebrew means, compensation. So that's where the name comes from. And that's why that particular son of Adam, according to those biblical stories, was named Seth. Okay. Now, when you look at Seth in the Hebrew, and then you take it to the Greek, remember the Greek for the deity that we know as Set. Seth is the Greek translation of it, which has a similar meaning. That can be applied on a multitude of different levels because compensation can mean many things. We can look at compensation as Set and what the adversary of Set represents being compensated for what we should via correct knowledge, correct information. There's many ways to look at it. But when we focus on the biblical meaning and in the context that the question is asked, that's why his name was titled Seth. You have to understand when you're reading those biblical stories, most of the characters' names reflect a certain action. Now, for an example, who was Seth's son? Enos, right? Enos means mortal or human. Most people love the rapper Nas and they don't even know what his name means. It's the abbreviation for mortal, Nas. It comes from Enos. Okay? Understand the etymology of the words because, especially in the biblical stories, because it denotes an action. Enos, according to the Bible, and you can look this up, in Genesis chapter 4, verse 26, he was the first mortal created. So everybody prior to Enos was not human. What the fuck were they is the next question. They were gods because prior to that, it said they knew. They weren't worshiping or praying to anything. I'm saying according to biblical history, you don't find prayer instituted until you get to the character Enos in Genesis chapter 4. So I always have asked Christians over the years, who were the people in the Bible praying to? They couldn't have been Muslims, Christians, or Jews prior to that because the religion of Judaism didn't even exist as we know it today and how it's practiced. Obviously, Christianity and Islam come much later. The question is, because when you read that quote, it says, Enos was one, and then men began to call upon the name of God or the Lord. So that's the first place you can find in the Bible where prayer or calling upon the name of God was utilized. So the question is, we know prior to that, what were they calling upon? Even if you take it after that, when you get to Abraham, right? Abraham was a Chaldean from the land of Ur. He practiced Babylonian magic. His father, as we know, was a Chaldean, not Nimrod. We know he was loyal to that. When you get into the 11th chapter of Genesis, the story of Nimrod and the Tower of Babylon, it deals with, because we know that the Hebrew doctrine was highly influenced by Babylonian information or doctrines. So we got to start asking ourselves these questions. So Seth then gave birth to Enos, and that means mortal. And then men began to call upon the name of God. So now they're mortals. They're not gods anymore. They don't have that godlike ability or power. They lost it, right? There's a significance in them symbolicism in their stories. They're trying to show you where it went wrong, but a lot of us didn't catch it because they don't teach it to us like that. So you can find all this stuff in there, but to really get the understanding of it, you really got to research the etymology of the words, the meanings. We use these names. Even the deity names we use on this path, you should have a good understanding of what they mean, because that's usually a telltale sign of the action that they represent, that the consciousness that they connect to. You should know that before you set out to do any work. All right. All right. Then Jack X, can shrooms increase your ritual work? Any hallucinogen can. I know the ayahuasca, people, the DMT, people talk about that. Mushrooms, acid, which activates a portion of the brain that taps into near the hippocampus area that deals with spiritual visions or the spiritual realm. I personally don't use it. I don't knock anybody that does. I always tell people, if you do, make sure you utilize it responsibly. Make sure you know the quality of the stuff you're doing. It is a part of this path. It's used in shamanism, especially aspects of shamanism. If you understand Native American shamanism, it's used to activate all aspects of your subconscious mind and to intentionally bring up your personal demons so you can conquer them. Anybody that becomes a shaman priest has to confront their personal demons, and using natural herbs and hallucinogens is part of that. But I believe if you discipline yourself on this path, you can obtain that state without using that. I know I can. So I'm not going to speak for anybody else or criticize anybody else. I personally don't use it, but if that's your individual's choice, again, that's your choice on this path. If you decide you want to use hallucinogens to obtain higher states of consciousness, that's your business. I would just say make sure you utilize it responsibly. Make sure you know what you're doing. If you're using it through a system of shamanism, make sure you know. I've heard stories of people going to Central America and working with some of these different Native American tribes and not know what they were getting into, and it could be dangerous. I know there's people that use the ayahuasca, and again, if that's your thing, and I'm not going to knock it. If you're getting results, then use it. Just utilize it. I would say just utilize it responsibly. Okay. Now to Nikita's question in reference to what Jack had asked earlier, and then tying it into, I would assume you're talking about Cain slaying Abel. We talked about that because the land of Nod, right? In the Hebrew, Nod or Nut means nude, right? The question we should ask ourselves with that story is, why was there a mark put upon Cain's head? Because now, pay attention to this now, as the story goes. Up until that point, we see the only people that are alive are Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, and Cain and Abel's sisters, Labuda, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but you can go look in the Bible. So the question comes, who were these beings in the land of Nod? And how did they get there? And who was Cain supposed to be fearing that this biblical God had to put a mark on his forehead so nobody would touch him and kill him? Because the Bible didn't tell us how any of them got there. Now, when we go back into the story, we see there's two creations, which most religious theologians won't acknowledge. We see a creation in chapter 1 of male and female in the first chapter of Genesis, read chapter 1, 26 to 28. It said God created male and female, created he them. We see simultaneous creation of the male and female gender. And he told them to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. The word there is mole in Hebrew, which means to refill. If this was a glass of water, I said this before, and when you're in a restaurant, what do you ask for sometimes when the glass is empty? A refill, right? Which is confirmation that what? Something was there prior to that refill. You got to also understand you're not reading what we know falsely as the beginning. See, time will get you fucked up with that. Genesis is talking about one of the many creation periods. When we study basic history and science, we know this planet has been destroyed multiple times. We know there's been meteorite showers. We know there's been galaxies and planets that have exploded and formed other suns. This is not the beginning. When you're reading the Genesis story, it's picking up from one of those many creation periods, going back specifically to what the Babylonians recorded, which is getting into a whole nother story. I don't even want to get into that right now. And then in the second chapter of Genesis, we see another creation, a separate creation of male and then female later on, going into chapter 3. So now we got two different creations. There's confusion here. Well, it's not really confusion if you understand it. It's confusion to religious people because they think it's talking about the same thing. This gives us the answer to there were already people on the planet prior to Adam and Eve. All you got to do is look at it in the text. It's right there. And then it talks about the giants in the earth, the Nephilims, right? When you get into the 6th chapter of Genesis, 4th verse, it says there was giants in the earth in those days. And they saw the daughters of men, and they were fair and looked good unto them. And they came in unto them and produced children. So now we have these giants, or these Nephilim, some say, the fallen angels that came down and impregnated human women. So now we have the seed of these fallen angels walking the earth, right? There's a science in this, and it connects to Lucifer. That some depict as it being a negative story, but really, is it? Were they replenishing the earth with the seed of Lucifer? Was this a coincidence that in that 3rd chapter, we have the story of the serpent who intervened and said, this dude's lying to you. He's not telling you the truth. That's why I'm here. So who really was the savior figure? Think about it, people. Then we see, I go on this shit all night, because those that know me, I've done classes on this shit over the years for hours upon hours, and I don't want to get started on it because I can take you through that. I can take you through that Bible from Genesis to Revelations. I could take you through all 114 chapters of the Quran, and I guarantee you when I'm done, you will never look at it the same way. Okay? Because that's been part of my training going back years back. Okay? Is it important for us to know this stuff? I think it is, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it's still a disease that plagues certain people. And the only way that we're going to be able to show people certain things is by cleaning that nonsense up and giving them the right breakdown at the right time when need be. You know, you don't go walking around looking for people to bash upside the head, because that's not the way you teach and educate. But we have many people on this planet who still suffer from a crippling disease and ignorance called religion. So if we dissect it and break it down, we can use it as a tool, not only for them, but for ourselves. Okay? That's a reality. So yeah, we see the Cain and Abel story. There's a lot of hidden significance in that. And as the brother Jack brought up, Seth, and there's symbolisms there. There's hidden meanings there. Do the research. You'll see it. But I guarantee you, use the tip I gave you. Start by research. When it comes to the names of these biblical characters, research the etymology and the meaning of their name. That's going to give you a telltale sign of where this is heading or where it's going. Okay.
Check your cell phone.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. All right. Let's see what else we got. So I see a few more here, then I'll open the phone lines for about 15, 20 minutes. Again, as I said a couple of weeks back, I'm in the midst of doing some intense personal work, and it's an 11-month project. I'm sorry, it's a couple of months project that's going to take me through July, so I'm not going to waste too much time. I just got to be clear with people. So I'm just looking for questions and keep it moving. All right. All right. All right, so let's do this. Okay, I don't really see, I mean, I've seen more so comments. But real quick, to Jack, a good book to use, the Santa Muerte Rosa. Get the book by Tracy Rollins. She's got a whole section in there called, the book is Santa Muerte. It shows you Scrying, that's a whole nother process. There's so, Mandela, I didn't see the email. I'm sorry. When did you send it? Unless I haven't been on there. Hold on. Yeah, I would like to talk with you about getting you on. Hold on. Let me see if I can pull it up. I don't know if it went to my damn junk box. That shit will happen. Oh, I see it now. You sent it just recently. Okay. All right, so I'll get with you on that. I see it. It just came through at 7:49. Yeah, I haven't checked the. Okay, yeah, I haven't checked the email in a few. I just pulled it up. All right, I will get with you on that. If not tonight, tomorrow. We'll definitely get that going for sure. Just a reminder, if not not this week, but next week. But I'll get with you on that. Remember, this Thursday night we have on the 6th. I didn't say that in the beginning of the show. I forgot. We're going to have Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum on Thursday night. So I just want to remind everybody, make sure you go through your Dark Light Conscious book or African Unconscious or any of his books that you have. And you got any questions for Dr. Bynum, have your questions. That's why we bring these guests here. All right. Take advantage of it. I know I keep saying that week in and week out. And I want to, again, stress this. And again, I'm not knocking or being judgmental. We need to use this time when we have these guests on for questions. I mean, not just for socializing, because as I said before, we can do that in our free time. When we have these guests here, we should pick their brain and ask them questions, because if you're reading the books and the material, you should have some questions for them. You should get an understanding from them. And I know, especially of the many books that Dr. Bynum's wrote, Dark Light Consciousness, Dark Light Consciousness covers a vast majority of topics. I know there can't be no way somebody read that book and ain't got no questions. There's just no way. It deals with Tantra. It deals with psychological aspects. It deals with neuromelanin. It deals with the construct of the brain. It deals with, any aspect you can think of. And that's a book I suggested to people over the years. What's a good beginner book on this path to begin with? And let me say this, and I've said this before. Understand this when Dr. Bynum is here. Yes, he's been initiated in Dravidian left-hand path. He's traveled to the temples in India. He is not per se a full-fledged left-hand path practitioner. You got to understand that. So I know one time he was here, somebody was asking him a question about vampirism. Don't come with questions like that. Dr. Bynum does not practice vampirism. Dr. Bynum, in my opinion, his information and his books of spirituality can be applied, in my opinion, to any path. He's very neutral. And that's why I bring him on. But understand he's not what we would call a full-blown left-hand path practitioner, and he doesn't need to be. It doesn't mean we can't get something. Information is information. He's definitely not fluffy right side, that's for sure, because the book is very deep. Him being a psychologist, still practicing one at UMass, very well known, he, in my opinion, brings the psychological aspect, all right, to this path that I think is missing in a lot of circles. Nobody talks about the medical aspect psychologically, and he gets some great advice on how getting in a sound mind, sound body, because in my opinion, when you're doing any intense ritualistic work, you need to make sure you're right, not just physically. Physically is important, but mentally and emotionally, because that affects your work. But the book deals and his information deals with so much more, all right? All right, so I see Phil typed in a question. After this question, I'll open the phone for a little bit. As a newcomer, how do you differentiate your personal demons and external spirits influencing you? That's a good question. Well, first of all, your personal demon is a complete separate concept or aspect. So let's talk about that first. Your personal demon just represents because everything that branches out from it, including those external spirits, are fragments that you're connected to via the awareness of your personal daemon. Because your personal daemon represents the real you. When you make that connection, and let's say you're doing demonic integration work, you're doing rituals, working with your personal daemon, it just makes you and opens you up to the awareness and the realization, one, who you really are. It makes your thoughts clear. I also like to connect it and reference it to the isolated consciousness that we talk about so much on this path, that it connects you to the awareness then when it branches out to some of your external experiences. Now, obviously, this is just my own take and experience with it. I'm not saying that's the tell-all, but in generalization, that's pretty much how it works. So you're able to differentiate if you have activated that personal daemon. It's very easy to differentiate what you're working with. Now, if you're not sure, maybe you're not, and I'm just speaking in general, not to Phil. I'm speaking if you're a newcomer and you're not sure what you're connecting to and working with, then maybe you need to time and plan your work a little bit better, because with planning and timing, and sometimes you don't have timing, doesn't always apply, because sometimes you do shit on the fly. And that's part of working with chaos energy. Sometimes there is no time to prepare. But doing the work and the research, I would always say start with rituals, basic stuff first, to activate that personal daemon, which gives you that awareness. That would help prevent you from not being confused or not knowing. Now, how you can get confused if you haven't done the groundwork or the shadow work, and you just jump into intense rituals. I'm going to be honest with you, not saying you won't get results, because you can. There's some people that can do that and it works for them sometimes, but for the most part, that could tend to be more detrimental to somebody who's not prepared. And that's where the confusion comes in, or the lack of awareness. All right. All right. Anyway, you see the number. Sister Myra put in the number. So if anybody, hold on, I got to actually get that screen up before that. Hold on. I don't have that screen up. Hold on 1 second.
Explain it in relation to the Ba and the Ka.
Say it again.
Explain that in relation to the Ba and the Ka.
The soul and the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Well, the soul, right? And a good breakdown of this, again, is in the Necro-Minion book. That's one place. Again, the works of Charles Pace, which I would recommend for anybody to read. The soul would be, that's the real you. That's the real you. The spirit are the emotions or the reaction that represents the soul. Spirit and soul are not the same thing. Most people think it is in religious schools of thought. It's not. The soul would be the very essence that embodies or consists of that personal daemon, or the real you, or the higher self. Because the soul is the very essence of who and what you really are. It contains the very essence of your existence. Because even when we deal with metaphysics and quantum physics and dealing with the soul and death, we know all these ancient systems were trying to, whether you read in the Coming Forth by Day, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, we know that the soul continues to live on. So it is the very essence of you that contains and embodies the consciousness that makes up the very fabric of your existence. There was a good movie, I mentioned it, I think it's called Transcendence, that came out a few years ago with Johnny Depp. And if you've seen the movie, Johnny Depp passes away in the movie, but they show you all this scientific stuff they did where they were able to tap into his consciousness, even though he physically passed on. But they were trying to show you in the movie consciousness continues to exist. That actually ties into what we call everything that's represented in the black flame, which is one of the many gifts of Set. That's getting into a whole nother thing. But the point being is, okay, your soul, in relation to that question, your soul is the very core essence of who and what you are. It's the very foundation of your existence. And the big thing that in many spiritual circles has been, does it ever die? No, it's energy. It never ceases to exist. You can't destroy energy. And energy continues to keep functioning and moving. Now, the 7 Hermetic Principles were trying to show that. And this is why I tell people, read those Hermetic Principles and understand that. Because when it talks about vibration and rhythm, And when it talks about how nothing ever rests, and when it talks about polarities of the same thing, frequencies, vibrations, right? We just know when we're looking at something physical, it's just vibrating at a slow frequency, creating the illusion that it's manifesting in what we're appearing to see. And I've always used that analogy. When that vibrational frequency speeds up, it takes on, it transitions into a whole nother form. We know the science of solid, liquid, and gases, right? The Rosicrucians teach about this in the temple degrees, right? If you've seen and you know, they talk about it, the etheric chord, right? They refer to it as, and that in essence is what we really are. We're made up of that etherian, etheric, or gaseous energy. And there's many different esoterical groups that teach and talk about that. You can't destroy energy, and energy continues to live on. We know the physical body dies. Right? It says, from the dust of the ground we came, from the dust of the ground we shall return. That's talking about the physical. That has nothing to do with the soul. One of the reasons why we're on this path, or on paths, and think about, if you are honest with yourself, the different stages of learning you went through in your life. That was one of the driving forces, understanding the mystery of death. Be real with yourself. That's one of the reasons you should be on this path, demystifying it and understanding it. Because we know on this path, it's not the end, it's just the doorway to the beginning. I've said many times before, the moment you were birthed into this universe was the moment you began to die. We think this is living. This is not living, people. As you get older, you get closer to death. And death is the doorway to eternal life. We got it twisted. This is not living. And that doesn't mean, I'm not promoting that as don't be in the world, don't enjoy your life, live a miserable existence, as some fluffy paths promote. Don't be in the world. You know, suppress all your worldly desires. No. Live your life to the fullest. Indulge within reason and enjoy yourself. Enjoy the time you do have here, but know this is just a temporary stop into a much greater journey that you got ahead. That you can guarantee. I don't give a fuck how much knowledge you got. I don't care how much you think you know. I don't care what you think you might know. I don't care if you think you do know. But one thing I can tell you, we all will taste death. That's for sure. And the bottom line is, you don't really know exactly what's going to happen when that comes. I don't give a shit what books you read. I don't care what theories you present me with. Don't give me no Carl Jung shit. Don't quote me no coming of the fourth by day. That's great. That's great. Those are concepts. But if you were real with yourself, if you were really going to be honest, and don't let your ego get in the way of this, you really ain't got a damn clue what happens to you when that takes place. Don't get spooky on me. I had a dream. Great. But you're still here. Talk to me about that when you die and then come back from the dead. Talk to me about that shit. And I'm not talking about I was dead for 5 minutes. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. If you were real with yourself, you would actually say to yourself, in essence, you really don't know. I don't care how much study you do. I don't care who gives themselves, I'm professor this, guru this. Great. Even those intellectual people would have to admit they really don't know either. Because here's the thing. When you deal with Runer, Dr. Stephen Flowers, right? Lords of the Left-Hand Path, another good book you should get if you haven't. He talks about a concept, Runa, which represents the hidden. And he talks about an aspect of transcending space and time. And in the book, he talks about, one of the things he talks about is, in order to really understand this, it's beyond the intellectual or the intellect. You can't intellectualize everything. It does. Now, I want to be clear on this. Because we do have people that try to over-intellectualize shit. And the character I was talking about in the beginning, that I had the difference of opinion that I referred to as Yogi the Bear, aka the yoga boy, Agent Smith. Some people tend to over-intellectualize shit, okay? And that sometimes is a hindrance to what's really right in front of them. You can't over-intellectualize, and the hidden represents that. The hidden also connects to this aspect when we deal with the Klepothic tree, the void, the darkness, where when we go to the Sitra Akra, the other side, now remember, we're talking symbolically. It's representing going into the inner depths of the subconscious mind. We connect with the demonic realm, the realm of the unknown that uncovers the known. And we see Lilith there to embrace us and guide us through. We see the feminine, the divine feminine that manifests first. And she incites the lust and the desire in us. But wait a minute, we're not just talking about physical, sexual lust. We talked about this a few weeks back. She ignites the desire and the lust and the quench and the thirst for knowledge. She's the one that infuses that. So who infuses the divine intellect? It's the divine demonic feminine energy represented in this aspect of Lilith. And as we know, if you study the Klepothic tree, the Klepothic path, she guides you through the demonic realm to get you to what we're talking about tonight, to activating that eye of Lucifer and looking through the eye of Lucifer and becoming the God that you're destined to be. Because it smashes up all of the indoctrination, it's the antithesis to the Sephirah. The Sephirah is nothing but Hebrew mysticism. So it's every anti that. That must be done in order for you to get to go where you have to go. Everything must be destroyed. What does that mean? Everything has to be torn down and broken apart that you've been indoctrinated and taught up until this point when you get on this path in order for you to really see where this is going. You got to be able to put that programming aside. And when you go into your ritualistic work, you can't let that influence you and bring it in. What do I mean? Your morals, your ideologies, your personal opinions has to be put on the back burner when you do ritualistic work. Because when you're tapping into the power of your subjective realm, there is no limitations. Because you tap into the subjective, especially when working with the Klepothic tree. That's for sure. You're opening up a porthole in a dimension to the many multiverses or universes that exist in your subconscious mind. It's where you create and destroy. It's where you manifest these demons and these gods. It's where you create these servitor spirits, for lack of a better word, if that's one of the paths you utilize or choose. It must be done. In order to create something, something has to be destroyed. Just look at the natural mundane process. In order to build a house, what do you need? Trees have to be destroyed to create wood. Brick and glass has to be crushed up. All of these things come from it. So something's being destroyed to be created. Okay? Now, there's a deeper science to that going back into the Bible story. Because, again, do the research on the etymology of the words. What is the word Genesis in Hebrew? Bereshith, go look it up. What does the word Bereshith mean in Hebrew? To reconstruct. So now the Genesis story is telling you what it's about. To reconstruct something is what? To fix something that was already there. You're not creating anything new. The very title of the book is telling you it's not the beginning of creation. Most religious people don't even know that. Ask a religious person, what does the word Genesis mean in Hebrew? Don't get into all that Kemetic shit, genealogy of Isis. That's phonetics. You're playing word games. Cool. You want to roll with that? Yeah, I've run into all them. Oh, the word, it's the genealogy of Isis. That's cool. I got no problem with that. In a sense, it is. But I'm saying, let's go to the etymology of the word. Despite playing word games, if that's what you want to do, let's go to the etymology of the word. What is the word Genesis in Hebrew? You guys go look this up while I'm on here now. Go Google it. Bereshith, to reconstruct. So the Genesis story is telling you they're reconstructing something that was already constructed. It was already here. That's what we have to do with ourselves. We have to destroy and reconstruct. I'm telling you, man, there's this. Look, I go on this shit all night. I'm just trying to tell you. If you want to connect, that's the route you're going to have to do. You're going to have to do the shadow work. You're going to have to uncover the unknown. You're going to have to deal with your bullshit, your shortcomings, your weaknesses, and turn them into strengths. You're going to have to take the anger and the rage and the emotions that you can't control and utilize that same energy, because rage and anger and raw aggression can be a good thing when channeled correctly. See, they ain't going to tell you that on other paths. They're going to tell you, oh, that's bad. Suppress it. No, with resistance, persistence manifests. Anybody knows that. That's common sense. So you can't sweep your bullshit under the rug and think it's going to disappear. If you got issues and you're not dealing with them, they will manifest. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And usually when you're ignoring them and sweeping them under the rug, guess when they decide to manifest? At the most inconvenient time imaginable. I've seen this happen to so many people. Look, you know me. I'm gonna give it to you the way it is. I ain't gonna tell you what you want to hear. I'm not interested in what you want to hear. I don't come with no gimmicks. I ain't got no props and gimmicks and concepts and false illusions to sell you. And I ain't coming from no clique or group mindset, because I don't care about none of that shit. I don't need any of that stuff. I'm just going to tell you like it is. And I couldn't give a fuck if you agree with it or not. That's not being callous. What you do with it is your business. Let me say that. This is not about being liked or loved, because in that process, there's always going to be people that love you. There's always going to be people that hate you. And that's a good thing. That's productive energy. You need a mix of both of that. But I'll tell you this, and I've said this before in the past, as soon as I turn these cameras off, there's a memory to me. I go about doing what I got to do. I'm focused on what I got to do. I don't sit around worrying about, did this person like me? Or this person? That's not me. I don't do that. Unfortunately, there are people that do. Their world, unfortunately, sometimes is centered around that. Sad to say. You have to shed all that stuff, people. I've always said, being on this path, one of the things you have to get over is you cannot be worried about what people think about you. That will be a huge weakness. If you stress over what people think about you, you're going to fall flat on your face. It doesn't mean you don't respect people. It don't mean that you don't conduct yourself in a certain way, as long as people don't cross the line and disrespect you. So you have to be able to be willing to stand up, take the punches. And on this journey, there's going to be ups and downs. That's life. You never hear me promote this path as a fix-all. I've always said, getting on this path, shit gets harder for you. It don't get easy. People think, oh, yeah, I'm going to start working black magic. I'm going to start working with the Lucifer energy. You know, I'm going to do a few rituals and boom, I'm this deep, dark sorcerer and magician. And no, people, with that comes responsibility. And with that responsibility comes more shit you got to deal with. So contrary to belief, if you're trying to come on this path to escape some other bullshit you failed at, you're going to fall flat on your motherfucking face. I can tell you that right now. Because this path will chin check your ass in a hurry. If you're playing games, it's going to be exposed. If you're trying to come on this path to hide from something you couldn't master or fix in another path, it's going to follow you here. And it's going to show its face at the worst possible time. And how many people I've seen come on this path? And how many people I've seen come on this path and carry their old bullshit with them? I always use the story of, Mandy, I was hoping that would have happened earlier. But sending the name and the pic helped. I was hoping it would have happened a little earlier, but I'm glad it happened. But I would like to, and I'm talking to Mandy, I know some of you don't know. When things settle down, I would like to talk to her privately, but let things calm down, okay? I would definitely like to talk to her. But I knew it would happen today. I was hoping it would have happened earlier, but I'm glad it happened. All right. Anyway, lost my train of thought. I don't know what the fuck I was talking about. Anyway, yeah, my whole point is, yeah, I've seen people come on this path, and I've referred to this story before in the past. One thing I see people still struggle with is this most high shit. I don't know how many times I got to go over this. Don't carry old concepts, especially religious concepts, over with you on this path. That will get you jacked up and confused. Don't do it, people. The hardest discipline, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's normal for more so newcomers than it is for more seasoned people on the path. I personally I can say, and I can only speak for myself, and I'm sure there's plenty of others that could. I don't struggle with that type of stuff no more. Just it's not an issue. It's not a concern. It is for some newer people, and it's very normal. So I would say to that aspect, don't get frustrated. You got to give yourself time. That indoctrination doesn't disappear in a couple of days, in a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months. Everybody's different. Everybody absorbs it on a different level. Sometimes it could take shorter amount of time for some people, but some people need a longer period of time to get past previous systems of indoctrination. But don't do it, all right? All right, so if somebody wants to call in, I'm gonna stay on for a little bit more, and we'll wrap this up. Shit, I can never remember the number. Myra put in 561-962-1137. All right. 561-962-1137. If you want to call in, go ahead and call in. I'll give a minute for that. I do have the phone line up. And again, if somebody's on the phone, do not call in while somebody is on the phone because I can't pick it up. I will be disconnecting the caller. All right. And so I'll give it a couple of minutes. But I think we covered I think you get the point of what activating the Eye of Lucifer represents. Many different representations. And it's a beautiful thing, people. I wouldn't trade this path for anything else. Okay. The greatest gift you can get on this path is knowledge of self. There's no price in the universe that you could put on that. Okay. That's the gift. The Eye of Lucifer gives you true knowledge of self. All right. Okay. William, you'd have to be a little more detailed with that question. I can only speak from my experience. One of the things I could say that would be dangerous in a sense is underestimating the power and the energy of it. It can be very intense. If you're activating the dragon aspect of Lucifer, it has a very intense, fiery energy. It could turn your world upside down because it brings tremendous change. So I always tell people, be very conscious of the fact when you're working with this type of energy, it brings change that you need, which sometimes we confuse with change that we want. Sometimes we don't understand the difference between our wants and needs. So that, in my opinion, would be one of the dangers you should be aware of. When I don't look at that word, where some people that may not be on this path, they might have a spooky interpretation of it, like it's dangerous and you're going to become possessed like the Exorcist and be spitting out green vomit, or Lucifer, Lucifer. That's all Hollywood shit. And I'm not saying you ask the question from that perspective, but the dangers are, if you're not prepared psychologically and mentally, it could have a negative effect. So I would say definitely, be prepared. And that being prepared comes with doing the research, doing the work that's necessary. All right. Greetings, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Mama La Muerte, aka Mandy from Jersey.
What's up?
Nothing. I just got the phone call and I'm out here letting my pups out. Pops upstairs putting some locks on the doors and I logged in. I'm like, let me see what's up with Big Bro. And yo, I ain't gonna front. Yo, the words that was coming out their mouth brought tears to my eyes. And then as soon as you saw me come in, it was a wrap, yo. I started bawling.
Yeah, well.
Lessons learned, man. Like, these are one of those moments where you look up and you be like, damn, like, what is this about? And let me tell you, we was tried. The last 48 hours, we was tried.
Yes.
Should have seen Pop in the back with his new backhoe. Yo, he demolished the chicken coop that was in the back. Yo, ripping some branches off the trees. I'm like, yo, they're alive, babe. What you doing?
I could imagine, but you went the right route when you contacted me earlier this morning, and not to get into detail, but
I couldn't think of anybody better.
Well, conjuring.
Honestly, I contacted family, and then obviously you know what I mean? You've been such a huge, you've made such a huge impact in my life. Raven, Maya, Duma, everybody else that I can't think about right now. I'm super emotional. You know why. And honestly, I ain't even gonna mind if you share, but we all go through trials and tribulations. And I know there's a lesson to this, but my lesson today was I ain't gonna get on that ass, get locked the fuck up, and lose sight of what we fought so hard for the last 6-7 years of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
was tried.
But you did one thing I want to commend you for. Most people abandon their spirituality in critical times of need. And I told you, and I knew when I asked you to send me the information I needed from you earlier, I knew it would happen today, but I figured it would be earlier, so I was off on that. But I knew it would happen today. But the first thing you resorted to was working your magic, and or going that route. And so many people, you know, lack of a better word, say they're about it, but that's when they abandon it. So
right, and it's crazy. All day, Pop was saying like Santa's trying me. She's testing me right now, and she's not gonna give us our blessings that we've worked so hard for. If I do what I'm capable of, and God, was he right? Like, because we had all the information we needed to do what we needed to do, but if we would have went that route, it wouldn't have went our way. And we just left it as, okay, we're being tried right now. We lived this life before. Now I'm just looking forward to the blessings that are coming after. Well, I'm just happy. And as soon as I logged on and I felt everybody's energy, I saw your face, I heard your voice, and the words that were coming out of your mouth, just always not. I love y'all, man. Thank you. Thank you.
We appreciate you too. But
and that's why I texted you that. I was like, Brother B, like you just as busy as I am, and you don't need to call me or text me after the show.
Right. I'm glad you called in.
I know you're busy, but I felt your energy. Thank you so much.
No, no problem. And remember Dave when he was here. We gotta remember, and I hope he didn't forget. Being marked for death, he can't lose that temper, that anger. We talked about that, and I know it's tough, but because that'll be disastrous. So I'm glad, that was tested, and I'm glad that he was able to.
I'm so proud of him. Like I knew it. I'm staying in my office because we put a new window in my office, and he's in the back. I let the pups out, and I go out, and he's driving with the excavator. He's ripping fences down and ripping the chicken coop down and just tearing shit down. I'm like, babe, I need that tree. He's ripping branches down.
But you know
I'm like,
what?
all right, you know what? I'm just gonna go inside and let him, because if he sits down and tries to do paperwork, which mind you is stacked up way high, if he stops doing something, his mind is gonna get the best. Like I knew what he was doing. So
but that's okay. But that was a good way for him to channel that energy because being marked for death, when you're marked for death in Santa Muerte, like he's been since a child, you go off the deep end. There's no turning back because you can
and he knew it. And it's crazy how you just said that because it's like that's exactly what he said. If I do what I really want to do right now, and those exact words, there'll be no turning back. That's crazy. I keep saying that's crazy, but I'm not surprised. I love you. I love everybody in this room right now. My vibe, my tribe, my family. As soon as I logged in, my heart just went right back into place.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. No,
I love all of y'all.
All right. Me too. Appreciate it.
And I will definitely keep you posted on the blessings that come through after this lesson. Let me tell you.
Yeah, when things settle down, let me know when me and her can have a private talk.
Oh no, definitely. I'll hit you up with that.
I definitely want to talk to her. All right.
Definitely.
All
Love
right.
you guys. Thank you so
Love
much.
you.
All
All
right.
right, Chica.
All right. Yeah, man. Look, and like I said before, just to speak in general now, look, don't think when you come on this path, you're not going to have any problems. And myself, I know Raven and others in this room, Sister Mandy that just hung up, though we've all made tremendous progress in our lives over the last couple of years and going even further back or whatever. But that doesn't mean we don't face trials and tribulations. You don't ever hear me. Look, you know what the funny thing is? People sometimes, when I'm talking, I want to make this clear. When I'm talking about fucked up shit, struggles, making mistakes, and going through hard times, I'm talking about it from experience. I don't just talk about these things because I read them in a book somewhere and I feel like I'm going to randomly talk about them because they sound like good things to talk about. I make plenty of mistakes. I go through many hardships and struggles. I'm not an open person about it. I don't talk about it. But sometimes, when you do this type of work, and I love doing this type of stuff, don't get me wrong. But sometimes it's just nice to have somebody contact you and say, hey man, what's going on? Check and see how you're doing. We don't do that enough with each other. Sometimes we only contact each other when we need something. I learned that lesson a few years ago, and it was very impactful on me. All right. With Dr. Delbert Blair. And towards the end, when he was sick, I'm going to say this was a couple of months before he passed away. I was on the phone with him. And I've mentioned this before. I think I did. I don't know if I ever did, but it's relevant to what we're talking about now. Dr. Delbert Blair was a very big hockey fan. So we used to talk sports. We talked a lot of hockey. He was a huge St. Louis Blues fan, and they're in the Stanley Cup. And this Stanley Cup is reminding me a lot of Dr. Blair. And I'm rooting hard for the Blues because I know he'd be happy as shit to see them win a Stanley Cup. They have never won a cup. They haven't been there since 1970. Anyway, so I called him, and I wouldn't just call him all the time just to pick his brain because I thought that was disrespectful sometimes. He was an elder. And I called him one time, and I guess he thought I was calling because he used to love to dialogue, have conversation, break down knowledge. Don't get me wrong. That's what he did. And I look at him as a big influence. And outside of left-hand path, if you would say, I might even do a video on his book, his last book he put out. I think I'm going to do that. Anyway, when I called him, he thought I was calling him this particular time because I was trying to pick his brain and get some knowledge and information. So I said, no, I wasn't calling for anything. I was just calling to check on you, see how you're doing, and just to say what's up. And I'll never forget the next thing he replied, and I could hear it like it was yesterday. And now I'm seeing it apply to myself. And this gets me a little bit emotional. You know what he said to me? And he was doing it. He'd been doing it for a long time. Those that know the history of Dr. Blair, he'd been doing it for a long time. A lot of the people bit off of his shit. He said, you know what? Nobody ever really calls me just to say, hey, what's going on? How you doing? How's everything going? How do you feel? How's your day going? How's your week? How's everything going at home? I think sometimes we forget some of these people are human too. They have human problems just like we all do. I'm saying that I have human problems like everybody else. I live life. But when Dr. Blair said that to me, it made me realize, man, like some of us we don't have no common sense. We don't have no common sense. At that time, prior to that, a few years before that, as you know, Dr. Ben passed away prior to him. Now, I wasn't per se I wasn't a student of Dr. Ben, like a lot of his followers claimed. And what I'm about to say, some people When I said it back then, got upset, but I don't give a shit. I'm going to say it again. Here's what pissed me off about the Dr. Ben thing. And I acknowledge a lot of work. Shit. The first name of my channel, Mother Nubia, was inspired by his work on ancient Nubia. That's why I called the channel Mother Nubia at first. Because Dr. Ben was the one dropping the reel that the original ancient Egyptians came from Nubia. And without Nubia, there would be no Egypt. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But all these people that claim to have all this love and compassion, and it's about, we got to stick together, helping the elders, this and that. The way they let Dr. Ben go is a damn fucking shame. If you don't know the story, Dr. Ben basically lived out the rest of his life when he was very ill in a shitty ass nursing home up in the Bronx. And anybody that knows that nursing home is not a good nursing home. Then it was an insult that they did a Christian-like funeral for him in a church. What? I just didn't get it. It didn't resonate with me. What the fuck is that about? Here's all these people claiming how they love Dr. Ben, love him to death. Why didn't people step up? Why should that man live the rest of his life decrepit in some nursing home? What it made me realize with all that conscious shit, you can't fight a war with no money. That's number one. Number two, instead of talking all this pro-conscious bullshit and debating all this nonsensical historical nonsense that holds no weight, if you talk about bringing money together in the community, well, we need to have our own healthcare system, not the healthcare of people that don't give a fuck about us. Okay? We shouldn't have to subject any of our elders to conditions like that. But what it made me realize that really them people and them groups ain't about shit. It's all talk. Okay? And it's funny, I know in my years running in certain circles, I found out strangers were there more for me than people that were in these groups and organizations. I had to depend on people. I depend on help from people. I got more help from Christians than I did conscious people. Let me keep it 100% for you. And it made me realize it's a mind state. Because it's always these motherfuckers that are talking about, it's about unity and coming together. They're the most non-unified motherfuckers you'll find on the planet. And I saw this reflected in the Dr. Ben incident and many other things. Look, I'm not going to continue on it, but I'm just going to finish with this. You can sit here and get mad. So I remember when I talked about this in the past, oh, why are you hating on the conscious community? Get over it. I'm not hating on the conscious community because I'm not part of it. So I can't hate on something I'm not part of. But now that I've separated myself from that mind state, I can now be critical about it. So there's a difference between being critical about it and hating. It's not hating, it's the truth. And if you feel like I'm hating on it, it's because it's striking a nerve within you. That's making you feel like I'm hating on it. You cannot justify the way they let that man go. How can you sit there and say that the white man this, the white man that, when you put his life in the hands of people that you say are the devil? How does that work, people? Break that shit down to me. Talk to me about that shit. And don't justify it with no bullshit. And don't give me the Ralph Cramden, hamada. It's bullshit. It's fake and it's an illusion. See, this path brings you to the realization for things for what they are. So I don't want to paint no picture. Anybody that's painting this picture that they got it all figured out, that they're fucking mythological superheroes, that's great. And act like they ain't got no human issues, they're full of shit. And they're masking in it with that illusion. I'm going to say it again what I said earlier. I'm going to leave it there. This path, it becomes harder when you get on this path, not easier. Don't let nobody bullshit you. Why? Because there's more of a responsibility. With knowledge and knowing, you're responsible. Not just responsible to teach others in certain areas, but you're responsible for your actions. Okay? Greetings, call. What's your name? Where you calling from? Hello?
Hi.
What's your name? Where you calling from? I think this is Suzette. Am I right?
No.
Okay.
This
This
is
is,
Kiana in
I was
LA.
going to say Kiana. That was my next one. But you guys call from the same area code. That's how I know.
Oh.
What's going on? What you got?
My phone had broken, so I couldn't call y'all, but I missed you. Hey, Raven.
She still here?
Hey, Kiana.
Oh, there she is.
Hey. So I was driving, so I called part of it, but I'm gonna go back and play the video again. But I heard you when you were speaking with the lady, and you were saying that when you were marked with death.
Right.
I wish you would really elaborate on that more, because you know
Okay.
who my lady is.
Right. Right. And in this case, I was talking to Sister Mandy, her husband Dave. Literally, some people that work with Santa Muerte, through certain systems of deviation, they're found to be marked from death since birth. That's not for everybody, but it can be detected through certain methods. And he is one of those individuals that death has walked with him even before he's been here. And when the calling with that is so strong in reference to the holy death, you can't neglect it even if you wanted it to. You just can't. It's kind of almost, just to give you an example to you and to others listening, it's kind of almost like when somebody's marked to be scratched in Palo. It's very similar.
Yeah.
So there's certain circumstances that dictate that. Now, I know before I first met him, he was told, and I sensed that the first time when he walked into the room, when he came amongst me, he was told that even prior to before he met me walking into a botanica where the lady didn't want to help him because she said that word to him. He was marked for death, but she was spooked out about it. But I remember him first walking in and I saw that Grim Reaper figure of the Holy Death standing right behind him. So some people are naturally connected to the Holy Death on that level. And again, that's in rare cases, circumstances. And again, it goes even further than that. So the way he has to work with it, for an example, is going to be different than some other people because it's a very volatile energy. And what I was expressing to her was when you're marked for death via the holy death, it's critical you don't blow your fuse or your temper because that's a sight that I don't think anybody would want to see because it's very destructive.
Because I experienced that. Like, I have to walk away because, like, when I get angry, because it takes me a minute to get angry because I'll try to see things for what they are. But when I get mad, it's like, I'm gone. Like that's why I try to avoid getting into trouble because I know if I have to stand before a judge, it's over. Like, there's no parole for me because I can go there. I don't like to get mad, you know. So when you said that, it sent a chill through my whole body because I'm like, wow.
So if you recognize that, that's an area you should always be consistently working on. There's a good side to it because you can utilize that raw energy and aggression to assist you in opening paths in other areas of your life, be it financially, be it to remove certain individuals that you may not want around you. You could utilize that to disassociate yourself from certain situations that are not productive for you. So what people like that are connected to that type of energy, they have to just take that aggression. That's how you take anger, rage, etc., and make it work for you. I always get that question over the years. Well, how do you take what people term those negative emotions and make them work for you? That's how you do it. But when you have no control of it, the danger with people that are marked for death via Santa Muerte, and in this case, I was glad to hear because, again, we're not going to get into the specifics of it. It was an ongoing situation that we were dealing with today. It was very critical in that situation to keep the rage contained, but find another outlet to exercise it, which was done. Now you can't suppress it. The challenge is, how do I exercise the rage and the anger and the energy without being destructive to myself? So suppressing it isn't the answer, And that's where the challenge comes in. So, but that's work I would always suggest to anybody, whatever level you're connected to on it, you should work with. I have to work. One of my biggest weaknesses that I had when I was younger, and I talked about it when Raven did the interview with me, when I was in my 20s, you couldn't tell me shit. And
yeah, I remember you said that.
Yeah, I would pop off at the mouth. I didn't care who, what, where, and it got me in a lot of trouble. I know now, and I'm actually going to be 48 in 6 days on the 10th. I know now.
Good for him.
Yeah, I'm going to be 48 on June 10th. I know as a 48-year-old man, I can't behave like that no more because that could be detrimental to my existence. But when you don't know how to channel that energy, that's where it can be destructive. Now, it doesn't mean I won't see now how I would approach it. For an example, and I recently had an incident this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way by using knowledge and intellect to approach it. I still will stand firm on my ground and my principles and what I stand for, but I ain't going to go about the same way of doing it. I have more of a Luciferian, crafty, intelligent way of doing it rather than just react on pure emotion. And that's what I mean when I talk about over the years, you got to learn to be proactive and not reactive.
I asked you a question because you mentioned common sense earlier, and common sense is not that common.
No.
It's not.
For some.
So I bought this ISIS spray, like mist, and it's from the maker called Daughters of ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
And I sprayed it on today because I got another job. Because remember, I was complaining because I had 2 jobs, but now I have one making what the 2 were paying together.
Right.
And so today was just like a little challenge. So I went out to my car and I sprayed the spray on, and it's supposed to invoke her, if I'm saying it right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went into work and I was just like more productive in 1 hour than I had been in 5.
But you know what gives it that power to do that?
What?
It's not the spray, it's you. What I mean by that is, right, this is how sprays, baths, formulas, this is how it works. And I'm telling this because I do conjure and root work. What people fail to understand, and I'm not saying you understand it, but if somebody gives a product towards a deity, such as this case, ISIS, you have really locked in your mind, this deals with the aspect asset. If they say this is for prosperity and growth, you have to convince yourself first in your mind that that's what it does. So your intent is actually charging the spray up. It does work. It is for that. That's the beauty of it. But you're the one actually doing the work. And I keep telling people that's how root work works. It's the same way with curses and hexes. The person that you're doing it on has to be in a certain mind state, because usually the person that believes in hexes and curses is because they have a weak frame mind and they've accepted in their mind that they can be harmed. It's the same process. I mean, it gets into a whole nother, but the point I'm trying to tell you is it worked because you in your mind, whether you were conscious of it or not, you could have subconsciously put it there. You accepted this spray is going to do this for me. Now,
I did real strong.
Big time. That's how that works. And that's how you got to,
because like I went in and I just was working hard, and then because my extension is 666. and nobody can stay in the cubicle where I work. Everybody gets up and they leave. They can't stay, and I'm like, somebody's like, they apologized to me, and I said, we're sorry, your extension is that. I said 666 is the number of man. That's not what you think it is. But I didn't say it arrogantly.
Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying, because when you're saying about the 666, because they're spooky. That's why.
Yeah, like I don't care about that. Like I want my extension to be 666. Like what's the better number,
Right.
And so when I got there, it was these girls, they were bullying me like really bad. I'm like, I'm not even a small chick. Like I had to look at myself in the mirror like, who did they think they are? But they had became arrogant. So I'm like, you know what? Numbers talk. Bullshit, run a marathon.
There you go.
I went in. I was like, man, I've been dogging in the field, and what it is, I work in the collections for a extended car warranty company.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to collect on first payments. That's how the company gets funded from the insurance company, from
Right.
and so now the owner of the company keeps coming up to me. He's looking at me. He was like, wow, I'm impressed. But I'm like, no, I'm not. I thought about it. I'm not going to let these chicks bully me. So now they want to be my friend because I'm beating them.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, but like I say, it starts with you. It starts with the mind and the energy that you charge it with. Most definitely. Definitely.
Okay, so what are your schedule? I know you got to go, but what's your schedule looking like this weekend or Friday? Because I get off at 7 o'clock your time.
Okay. Well, but you're in Cali, right? That's Cali.
Yeah.
4?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 3, 4. Just email me your availability, and then we could go from there. That should work. 3, 4. After 6 is no good. I know that. That I know I'm booked after 6.
My time or your time?
My time, which that would be 3 your time. But so you're saying what, 3 your time? Well, that's 6 my time. Just send me the times.
I get off at 7 your time, which is 4 my time.
Okay. There could be a block in there. Just email me so I don't forget. I'm sure there's something in there somewhere. But send me
What's the difference between a reading and a consultation?
Okay.
Don't talk about me because I told you common sense is not that common.
No. Well, you weren't on the beginning. I usually put that in the beginning of the videos. A reading is using a system of divination to consult the spirits, and whatever comes up, we just roll with it. Whereas a consultation, you can focus on specific areas, ask questions, talk and discuss whatever you want to discuss. It's kind of a free-for-all. So you can utilize it however you choose. But that's the difference.
But it's still for the same amount of time?
Same amount of time, yep.
I think I want to do a reading instead of a consultation because I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, just send me the email.
I'm going to email you.
And just send me the times so I know.
Okay.
Man. All right?
Thank you so much.
Cool.
See you, Raven. Bye.
All right. Yep. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up, people. I got to get off. Running a little late, stayed on a little longer than I wanted. Real quick before we go, again, to go over the events. You want to run through them again, the ones I went through the beginning, Raven, or you want me to just the October event? I was also. Well, let me say this again. More than likely, we are not going to have a ritual for this month. We're going to skip this month and take a break. If something changes, it probably won't. I'm pretty certain we're going to keep it like that. Just take a break for this month and reconvene next month. Let me just run through them, Randy. And the event in October, the 25th to the 27th, Journey of the Black Adept, number 2. If you need information on that event, for readings, consultations, the online classes, which begin July 20th. If you need information on that, send me an email, and I will get it out in the next day or two. The individual private class I plan on doing on the 29th, which will be from 3 to 7 p.m. If you want to sign up for that class, I will send you the information on that. Let me get that together. I've been meaning to do that the last couple of days, but I haven't been able to get to it. So we'll go from there. But other than that, is there anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
No.
We're good? Okay. All right. Other than that, remember Thursday night, that'll be the next show. We'll have Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum here. Have your questions, people. All right. Other than that, I appreciate the support.
No, I just echoing.
Oh. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate the support for those that donated. Appreciate that. And we will see everybody here Thursday night. All right. Peace.
Peace.